Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so today we are swapping the boardroom for the forest floor. We're trading, the immediate visibility of capital markets for these ancient hidden secrets, chasing an aroma that, well, pound for pound, often costs way more than gold. We're opening up the introductory chapter of this really remarkable book all about truffles. And look, this isn't just a recipe guide or like a dry historical text. The source frames it as a genuine quest narrative, almost an invitation into a secret society.
That's absolutely right, yeah. And our mission in this deep dive, to really quickly grasp the sheer unique allure of truffle hunting. We want to understand why these elusive subterranean fungi hold such an intensely revered place, both in nature and in gourmet cuisine, and crucially, how this source material frames the whole pursuit, because it's presented not as some exclusive luxury only for the wealthy, but as a surprisingly, well, democratized adventure, waiting for anyone with the right mix of knowledge and patience.
I find that framing immediately fascinating. I mean, our instant cultural reference for truffle is exclusivity, right? Extreme expense, Michelin stars.
Mhm.
But the intro to this source, it starts somewhere totally different. It focuses first on the experience itself.
Exactly, yeah. And if we zoom out a bit, the source argues truffle hunting isn't simply like an agricultural harvest. It is, and I love this description, a harmonious dance between man and nature.
Mm.
It's an exercise that combines the physical, almost spiritual thrill of discovery with this profound culinary anticipation. The book really implies that the truffle's greatest value isn't maybe the monetary one, but the experiential. The journey itself is the real reward.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's dive into that atmosphere the author creates. We've called this section one, the sensory world of the hunt. The source just immediately immerses you, painting this picture that feels almost mythical, suggesting this is a venture into an enchanted world.
hmm And the atmosphere is just crucial to understanding the whole proposition. A successful hunt is usually measured by the yield, the weight. But this introduction, it focuses entirely on the process of searching. And it starts, I think, really effectively with the visual stuff. The setting is the quiet embrace of these ancient woodlands. And the light doesn't just filter through the canopy. The source describes it like sunlight filtering through the branches like liquid gold.
Wow, that detail, liquid gold. It sets such a magnificent tone straight away. It suggests the environment itself holds the first layer of treasure, almost like a visual, maybe spiritual reward before you even find the fungus itself. It frames the whole activity as this immersion, into a natural sanctuary.
It is. It's absolute total immersion. And right after the visual, we get hit with the most important sense here, the olfactory, the smell. So you're moving through this golden light, and then you realize the earth beneath your feet is uh, exhaling the intoxicating scent of hidden treasures. Like the forest is signaling its secrets, but only to those who are quiet enough and patient enough to actually pay attention.
That's a fascinating way to put it. The earth exhales. It suggests the truffle isn't just passively sitting there waiting. It's actively announcing its presence through these volatile organic compounds, right? Though subtly. This really moves the emotional element way beyond just simple foraging. The source frames it as an immersion into nature's wonders, tying the physical act directly to this almost meditative state.
And what's fascinating is how the source ties that physical act to a really profound emotional payoff. It emphasizes reconnecting to the deep, slow rhythms of the earth beneath the forest floor. You aren't just looking for a pricey ingredient. You're engaging in this kind of dialogue with the natural world that completely grounds you. The whole pursuit forces mindfulness. It really does.
But you can't complete this quest alone. You need your collaborator.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that partnership and the intense anticipation that builds.
Right. The human-animal bond is absolutely central, maybe the single most essential element to this whole quest. The source details the importance of the trusted companion, that keen-nosed dog trained specifically to sniff out these earthy gems. Historically, pigs were used, swine.
Yeah.
But they posed a problem because, well, they loved truffles maybe a little too much, and they tended to damage the fragile underground environment. The dog, though, trained to alert, not consume, becomes the perfect partner. Essential.
And it demands a specific kind of physical experience too, doesn't it? You're not just crashing through the bushes frantically, you are treading softly through the labyrinthine woods. It requires this slow, respectful, almost ritualistic movement, minimizing disturbance.
Precisely, yeah. The source is really emphasizing patience and respect here. Truffles only grow in very specific, undisturbed ecosystems. If you disturb the mycorrhizal network that sustains them, that root system, you risk destroying future harvests. So this need for soft treading and patience, it's actually an environmental imperative disguised as a psychological technique.
Huh. And the psychological payoff is tied directly to that movement and that partnership. The source notes that each soft step reveals layers of anticipation. It's a slow burn excitement,
Right.
reinforced by strengthening the camaraderie forged with your four-legged partner. It transforms what could be a solitary, maybe mundane task into this shared, highly focused mission. You're relying completely on the keen senses of an animal you absolutely trust.
And just think about that connection for a second. The dog detects an aroma that's virtually imperceptible to us, parts per trillion maybe of these compounds. The dog stops, paws lightly at the ground, and the hunter has to trust that signal implicitly, knowing that one small gesture, a paw on the dirt, represents hours, maybe days or even weeks of patient searching finally paying off.
So, okay, after all the soft treading, the filtering sunlight, that intoxicating scent, we get to the moment of discovery, the culmination. How does the source capture that profound nature of unearthing a truffle where the human and animal efforts finally converge?
Well, the description is inherently elevated. It moves beyond just luck or skill. It's called magical.
Hmm?
The source frames the successful discovery not just as skill or training, but as if the forest itself has gifted you a secret.
Mm-hmm.
And the careful act of digging, often with just a small trowel, requires the hunter to expose the treasure without damaging the root system around it.
That's critical, isn't it? It removes the purely transactional aspect of harvesting. You haven't just bought it or extracted it. You've been, chosen to receive this gift, a reward for your mindfulness and partnership. It really highlights that ultimate connection to the wild, reinforcing that understanding of the Earth's rhythms we mentioned. The physical act of digging is the final payoff for the emotional investment and that deep connection with your partner.
And that leads us perfectly, really, to the next step in our deep dive. The source has done a beautiful job setting the scene, with poetry and atmosphere, but now we need to pivot to the substance. We need to move from the hunt itself to the object of the hunt. What is it scientifically that makes this gift such a cornerstone of gourmet cuisine? And how does the ancient biology of this fungus dictate its modern, often crazy, price tag?
Right. That takes us squarely into what we've called Section 2, the treasure below, defining the truffle's value. We need to identify truffles precisely now, moving from the poetry to the rigorous biological reality.
That's the crux of it, yeah. Truffles are defined first and foremost as elusive underground fungi. They aren't tubers, they aren't roots. They are the fruiting bodies of certain species of fungi, specifically in the genus tuber. And their whole existence is defined by this microscopic, highly specific biological handshake.
Can we pause there for a sec? What exactly does that relationship look like underground? Is this dependency unique to the truffle, or do other prize fungi have this too?
Well, it's the absolute key to the whole mystery and the scarcity. Truffles are hypogous, meaning they grow underground, and they form what's known as a mycorrhizal network. This is that symbiotic relationship the source mentions, where the fungus connects directly to the roots of certain host trees. Think oak, hazel, sometimes beech. And it's a mutually beneficial trait. It really is.
Okay, what are they trading? What's the deal?
So the fungus, it can't photosynthesize, right? So it needs carbohydrates, sugars, which the tree makes through photosynthesis. Simple enough. In return, the fungal network acts like this massive underground sponge. It helps the tree access crucial water and minerals, especially nitrogen and phosphorus, from the soil, much more efficiently than the tree's own roots could ever manage alone. They are biologically tethered, locked together. This dependency means you can't just plant a truffle spore in a pot and expect it to grow. You need the entire complex ecosystem. The specific host tree, the right soil chemistry, pH, drainage, and years, often decades, of undisturbed growth.
Wow. Okay, so that biological complexity explains why they're so incredibly difficult to cultivate reliably on a mass scale, which is the direct engine of their rarity and, yeah, their value. But that only explains why they're rare. It doesn't quite explain the flavor itself, that intense aroma the dog is sniffing out.
Ah, yes. That's the aromatic alchemy the source talks about, that unique, intoxicating flavor. It's the result of volatile organic compounds, VOCs. These are complex chemical signals, often containing sulfur compounds. But what's truly fascinating, from a biological perspective, is that the truffle produces these scents not for our gourmet pleasure, but as an evolutionary mechanism.
Just a reproductive strategy, isn't it, to get dug up?
Precisely. Exactly. Since the truffle is trapped underground, it can't disperse its spores using wind like a normal mushroom. It needs an animal, historically a sow, now often a dog or maybe a rodent, to sniff it out, dig it up, eat it, and then disperse the spores elsewhere in its droppings. So the VOCs are essentially an airborne advertisement, a highly complex chemical invitation saying, come find me, eat me, spread my genes. What we, the human gourmands, find so intoxicating and expensive is merely the truffle shouting to be eaten and spread.
That just reframes the whole experience. It's kind of mind-blowing. The hunter and the dog are just playing their parts in the truffle's own centuries-old reproductive strategy. It's the ultimate evolutionary irony that an animal's hunger and a human's sophisticated palate are what drive the global price of this fungus.
And that, in turn, drives its culinary status. Truffles hold this deeply revered place in the world of gourmet cuisine.
Absolutely. They are intensely, highly sought after by chefs and food enthusiasts alike, often just shaved thinly over dishes to provide this almost irreplaceable depth of flavor, earthy, musky, sometimes garlicky, nutty, just undeniably unique.
It really is the ultimate farm-to-table story, isn't it? But the farm is an ancient woodland, and the harvest requires a skilled animal partner. It adds this incredible layer of depth to the dining experience. You're tasting scarcity, connection, the deep history of the forest floor. And this appeal is timeless. It's not some modern fad. The course points out that truffles have enchanted royalty, gourmands, and humble foragers alike for centuries. Ancient Roman writers, like Pliny, were obsessed with them. They thought they were created by lightning strikes, attributed them with aphrodisiac properties, medicinal uses. This historical context just builds on that sense of mystery and reverence.
And the sheer difficulty of finding them means they've become these definitive symbols of luxury and sophistication. You just can't mass produce that mystery. And we see huge price differences, don't we? Especially between species like the winter black truffle, Tuber melanosporum, versus the astronomically priced Italian white truffle, Tuber magnatum. That monetary association is impossible to ignore.
It is, absolutely. But here is the critical pivot the introductory chapter makes, and it really serves as the book's core thesis. It acknowledges the luxury, the wealth connection, the sometimes shocking prices, but then insists that truffles represent something deeper. The dual role is this. Yes, they symbolize sophistication, but fundamentally they represent the harmony between human endeavor and the natural world.
And that transition takes us directly to the core invitation of the entire book, which brings us to section 3. Democratizing the quest, an invitation to adventure. This is where the source material really challenges that traditional perception of exclusivity head-on.
Yeah, and we had to acknowledge that common perception first. Truffles are synonymous with exclusivity, and the price tag frequently requires, well, the source says, a king's ransom. That's the harsh reality of the market, driven by scarcity and that biological dependence we talked about.
But the key twist our source delivers is framing truffle hunting as a democratic delight. Now, that's a powerful phrase, intentionally provocative, I think, because it immediately lowers the barrier to entry, at least philosophically. But let's be blunt for a moment. Isn't that framing potentially a bit misleading? How does the book actually reconcile the inherent exclusivity of a luxury good with this claimed accessibility of the pursuit?
That is the essential conflict the book really digs into. And the democratization, as the source presents it, is achieved by focusing on the pursuit, not necessarily the product. Okay, the price of a truffle is high, yes, but the price of the knowledge to hunt for one, comparatively low. The source material details that the necessary tools for the beginner aren't wealth. They are the right knowledge, a dose of patience, and a touch of luck.
Okay, let's focus on that right knowledge. What does that mean practically? Where does the source suggest someone gets the knowledge to take part in this highly specialized dance?
Well, the knowledge required is multifaceted. It involves understanding seasonality, knowing when different species actually fruit, and knowing the exact microclimates and host trees required. You can't just look under any old oak. It also involves knowing the subtle signs on the forest floor, maybe changes in vegetation, things like that. And crucially, you need to know how to train a dog, or at least how to acquire a trained dog, or partner with someone who has one, which often means connecting with local foraging groups, maybe taking specific regional courses. So the low barrier to entry is really the commitment to learning, not necessarily the upfront cost of fancy gear.
So the democratization isn't about guaranteeing you'll strike it rich on day one with a massive truffle find. It's more about making the initial education and the act of participating accessible regardless of your bank balance. Patience, then, becomes the great equalizer.
Exactly, yes. And that's the transformative nature of the quest the book is celebrating. It promises that a humble stroll in the woods may turn into a rewarding quest. It takes the ordinary, just a walk in the woods, and by applying knowledge and patience, elevates it into something potentially extraordinary. This democratizes the adventure itself, you see, because the greatest value, the most lasting reward, is often the memory and the process.
It transforms an ordinary day into an extraordinary memory.
Right.
It's the process that becomes the enduring treasure. Regardless of the size or weight of the actual truffle you might unearth, if you even find one. This really emphasizes the inherent value in the pursuit, rather than focusing purely on the commodity value at the end.
And this is where the source broadens its scope quite significantly. The introductory chapter, as it starts to wrap up, really sets the scale for the rest of the book's journey. It promises to tell the full story of truffles, which is described as being as rich as their flavor. I like that.
And that promise covers an incredible spectrum. It makes it clear the focus goes way beyond just the history or the hunt itself. We're talking about covering everything from ancient legends to modern sustainability efforts. The source is promising a really comprehensive education.
Mm-hmm. And that promise of sustainability is crucial today. It informs the reader that participating in truffle foraging isn't simply about finding treasure. It carries a real responsibility. Modern sustainability efforts, which the book apparently explores later, address how to manage those fragile mycorrhizal networks, how to prevent overharvesting, and ensure the careful stewardship of the host trees and the whole forest ecosystem. This elevates the pursuit from just a hobby to potentially an act of environmental preservation, if done right.
It implies a pretty complete education for the reader, then, moving you from just a curious observer to a genuinely well-informed participant, understanding the past, the present ecological challenges, and the future responsibility tied to truffles.
And finally, the intro chapter gives this truly motivating, concluding call to action. It really sets the tone for the whole book. It ends with this definitive encouragement to the reader, to you listening.
Yeah, it uses that vivid, immersive image one last time, a concrete instruction to physically engage. Lace up your boots. Leash your truffle hunting companion.
And the final promise it leaves us with is just so evocative. It suggests that beneath the forest canopy, a universe of wonder awaits, a place where the past and present converge, carrying the promise not just of knowledge and history, but of that ultimate gastronomic delight we all associate with truffles. It's a beautiful synthesis of history, biology, and intensely personal adventure.
So as we wrap up this initial deep dive into just the essence of the introduction, what's the key knowledge takeaway? What should you, the listener, really hold on to?
I think the essential synthesis is this. Truffle hunting, despite its deep association with extreme luxury, is presented here as this beautiful convergence. It's rigorous natural science, compelling historical reverence, and genuine outdoor adventure all rolled into one. And crucially, the source material insists it's an adventure accessible to anyone willing to put in the effort to acquire the knowledge and exercise patience. It's really a call to engage with nature in a mindful, meaningful way, acknowledging that the value lies fundamentally in the effort, not just the potential yield.
You know, I think the most provocative final thought, based purely on this source, is exactly that commitment to democratization. It's fascinating. We started by accepting the premise. Truffles are worth a king's ransom. Yet the adventure itself, the book claims, mainly costs you time, effort, and knowledge. So the core insight, or maybe the question it leaves you with, is how can something so historically tied to extreme wealth truly be democratized? Just through effort and information. Can the forest floor really be the great equalizer?
That's the challenge the book lays down, I think. The most guarded treasure is hidden, yes. But the map to finding it through knowledge and a keen-nosed friend is potentially available to all.
Absolutely. Now look, this introductory chapter has really only scratched the surface. We know that. It promised us the full story, delving into ancient history, exploring precise foraging techniques, addressing those critical modern sustainability efforts. That's a huge amount of ground still left to cover.
And it sets up our next deep dive perfectly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The romance and the philosophical foundation of the quest are established now. But next time, we need to move beyond the emotion, perhaps, and start digging into those promised practicalities, the historical context, the techniques, and that necessary responsibility that comes with being a modern ethical forager.
Indeed. Yeah, we definitely look forward to getting into those practicalities in our next installment. And for those of you listening who want to maybe get ahead of the curve and embark on the full journey right now, remember this initial deep dive was based on just chapter 1 of what sounds like a really comprehensive guide to this world. You can find the complete book. It's titled The Joy of Truffles. It should be available in bookstores and online. And you can continue the adventure that awaits beyond that forest canopy yourself.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
We'll catch you in the next deep dive.